help American people, American friends to learn Chinese language, or you call it Mandarin. And also I will give some lectures on Chinese history and culture. So the first time when I came here, I heard some of you say howdy to me. I was surprised because I thought, oh, they know Chinese language. You may not know. In China, in one of China's provinces, the Sichuan province, when they say something, say okay, they said howdy. So it's in Chinese language, there is howdy. But that means okay, good. But here you say howdy means how do you do, I see. So anyhow, language sometimes come together. And this topic, I know it's a sensitive topic. It's not only academic, but also concerning everybody in China, including me. So I am a parent who have only one child because of this policy. Otherwise, I wanted at least 2 children, at most 3. But because of this policy, I have 1 child. Okay. And also, yes, I'm from China. You can see from my appearance. And I'm an associate professor at Ocean University of China, which is located in Qingdao. And this Confucius Institute is founded by Ocean University and Texas A&M. So, okay, now let's go on to our topic. Before I talk about the policy, I'd like to let you know the general information about China's population. You can see, according to the latest state census statistics, the total population in China is over 1.3 billion. So let me ask you, you know how many people in USA, or what's the population of the USA? Okay. Yeah, 300, a little over 300 million. So you can see China has 1 billion people, one more billion people than you. You can imagine. So you can see everywhere you can see Chinese. So even as far as I know, in Texas A&M, there were about 6,000 Chinese students. That is to say, about 1/10 of here are Chinese. So such a large people. Among the total population, the Han nationalities takes about 91%, while the other nationalities altogether only 9%. And maybe you know, in China, there are altogether 56 nationalities. So you can see, most of them are Han nationalities. And the male and the female ratio is male about 51% and the female about 49%. And the ratio, the male and the female ratio between is, there are 105 men to 100 female. Maybe it's this number maybe is a little lower than we expected. And the annual increase of population is 12 million. So 12 million usually is a common country's total population. But China every year increases such a number of people. And anyhow, this number is much lower than before the policy enforced. Now here's the population density of China and the USA. So we can have a comparison. China, you know, the land size is about 9.6 million square kilometers. But do you know the U.S. land size? So I'm a teacher. I like to ask questions. Do you know the land size of the USA? You can guess. If you don't, you can guess.
9 point.
Yes, a little over 9 million square kilometers. You can see the land size is similar. China is a little larger. But the population, you can see China has much more people. And the density, as you can see, most of Chinese lived in the east part. While in the west part, the Xinjiang and the Tibet is not so crowded. Very few people live there. And this one-child policy has no influence on them. So have a comparison. You can see USA is much lucky, much more fortunate. Now, before we talk about the one-child policy, I'd like to let you the China's birth control policy, or the Chinese population history, population policy history. In early 1950s, China actually encouraged people to have more children. There are two reasons. One reason is that after the Second World War, in the world, the Second World War lasted about 6 years. But China is longer, because China at that time mostly against the Japanese invasion. It lasted from 1931 till 1945. So lasted long. And the total nation to against the Japanese started from 1937. So usually we Chinese said the anti-Japanese war lasted 8 years. The victory, of course, is by Chinese people hard struggle. But also we should say thank you, America, because USA at that time were ally of China. We together defeated the Japanese invasion. But then, unfortunately, since 1946 till 1949, there was a civil war in China between the Communist Party army and the Kuomintang army. So after 3 years of the civil war, the Communist Party took over the power and founded the People's Republic of China. Then at that time, the population, you can see, is much lower now. So the government encouraged people to have more children. We need more young people, need more people to join the army, to take part in the agricultural production. So because, of course, at that time China had a union, or China had a good relationship with USSR, or Soviet Union. So at that time, Soviet Union also encouraged people to have more children. So if a mother had more than 3 children, she was a heroine mother. So at that time, as Chairman Mao, the leader of China at that time, said, bear as many children as possible. The more people, the better. So from the picture painted in 1945, you can see in one family at least 3 children. So that was a happy life. And just because of this encouragement, China population increased rapidly. You can see from 1949, 475 million. And 4 years later, it was already over 6 million. That means increased more than 100 million. Then time's going on quickly. 20 years later, that was in 1970, the population was already 830 million. That means less than 30 years, China has a population doubled. And the average birth number per couple were 5 children. And my parents also got married in 50s. But unfortunately, they had only 3 children, including me, because before I was born, my 3 sisters died because of some illness. So I became the first one, and I had 2 younger brothers. So at least we have 3 children in the family. I remember one of my neighbors, they have 9 children. So you can see. So the situation became worse. So the Chinese government found it's a problem. We must have a family control. So family planning came out. The picture was painted in 1970s. That was during the Cultural Revolution. So from the slogan, you can see, practice family planning for the revolution. Everything was for revolution. So there's a little control. As Premier Zhou Enlai said at that time, he said, for one family, 1 child is okay, and the 2 children are the best. And 3 children are too many. So in 1970s, the government encouraged the family to have 2 children, or less than 3 children. Then finally, the Cultural Revolution ended. And in 1978, Deng Xiaoping came to power again. He was more open-minded, and he stressed on the economic development. So he had an ambitious goal. That was by 2000, China must fulfill the 4 modernizations, and the economic must have a great increase development, and to let people have better life, to improve people's living standard. But then, at that time, China's population was already over 900 million. So some experts or scientists and the government officials thought it's a serious problem. The too many people was a block to the economic development. And you know, China was not as rich as now at that time. Now that China was much richer than before. At that time, China was poor. So they thought, so many people, how can apply enough food, enough clothes, enough living houses, enough job for so many people? So we must have a birth control. And because of this, some scientists and population experts wrote a proposal to suggest to have 1-child policy. Then in 1979, this policy was put forward. And from 1980, this policy was enforced, and the people have to follow. And the goal was to contain the population by 2000 within 1.2 billion. But this policy is against the Chinese traditional concept of fertility. Now, let me tell you now, what's the Chinese traditional fertility? The idea. The first was more children, more happiness. Chinese enjoy the big family. You can see from the photo of a family, 4 generations come together. Even 40 years ago, the 4 generations used to live together. You can see Sitting, this is grandparents, and this is grandmother, and this may be the mother and the father. 4 generations. The children maybe the 4th generation. I can't tell the details. You can guess who is the oldest generation, the 2nd, the 3rd, and the 4th. So Chinese had more children, more happiness. The second idea is that to have so many children, especially to have the son, the purpose was to continue the family line. In China, only the son can give the family name to the children. So, for example, most of the Chinese have the family name called Zhang. You can say Zhang San. Of course, it's opposite to Western culture. Western, the name order is given them first, and family name last. But China opposite. China's family name first, so stress family. So Zhang San, Zhang Wu, and so on. So to continue the family line. If without children, especially without the son, the family line will end it. So I'm facing the problem because I have only one daughter. So my younger brother got a son. So that son got more favored by my mother, my father. So it's traditional idea. So although my daughter was more excellent than her leader. The third concept of Chinese traditional fertility idea is to bring up sons to support parents when they are old. Because when people become old, it's the family, it's the children to support them. So if we have only one child, not enough. Or if we had only one daughter, the parents would start. When the daughter got married, they would move to her husband's home. Who take care of us when the parents become old? So traditional idea is very strong. Then China said must have policy, must have a regulation to have people to obey or to follow this policy. Then in 1982, the family planning policy was written into China's constitution. And of course, this policy mostly stressed on one child per couple. So this means over 90% of Han nationality people have to obey this and can only have one child. Strangely enough, the policy has been enforced for 20 years, but there was no law, just have provincial regulation. So the central government gives the power, gives the authority to the local government, to the provincial. In China, one province equals to one state of the USA. So every province had their regulation to carry on the one-child policy. It was not until 2002 the population and the family planning law appeared. And this law also stressed on one-child policy, one child per couple. And if you break the law, then you'll be fined. Then how today? Like you see, if you had more than one child without permission, then you have to pay a social maintenance fee. So what's a social maintenance fee? That means you give burden to the society, so you have to pay. And how much? It's usually at first 3 times of your yearly income. For example, if I earn 10,000 yuan, then I have to pay 30,000 yuan. for having the second child. And then later, in some province, increased to 7 times. And also some other regulations, some other strict. If you can see, without a planned birth, government will have fine. Some people would have been fired from the work. You will lose a job. And some will be fined a lot of money. And also, a highly organized service was formed. It was called Family Planning Commission. This commission was from the central government till the local government, until the city, the municipal, the county, or even the community. They have a family planning office. Their purpose or their task is to carry on this policy. That means if you had a second child without permission, you pay a lot of money. The money is to paid by is fined by them. They can get the money. And another is one veto system for the local government official. That means if one of your staff had a second child without permission, not only that person would be fined, but also all the staffs got influenced. All of you maybe some punishment, or the leader of this unit got punished. For example, he could not get a reward because of this, or they couldn't get some money because of this. So everybody was influenced. Of course, on the other hand, there were some rewards if you obey or if you follow this policy. For example, you can get one-child certificate. So when I got my daughter in 1989, so I got this certificate. And with this certificate, I can get some money from my unit, at least 20 yuan each month. And with this, my wife could stay at home for 2 months after giving birth. And also, we got some reward. When we choose a house, we can have first to do this, some good reward. The children could go to school without pay or pay a little. And if your child got ill, you go to the hospital, you don't have to pay. The government will pay for you, or you could only pay a little. Otherwise, a lot of money you have to pay. Of course, the consequence is if you didn't follow. You lost a family allowances. What does it mean? It means usually in China, when a child was born, firstly, you have to go to the police station to get a registration. Then you can get identification. Otherwise, you had no identification. You become a person without identification. Also, some serious fine, and maybe you lose a job, and so on. Now, I will give you 2 examples. Zhang Yimou, maybe some of you know him. He is the most famous Chinese film director. He got some international reward. And also he was the director of the 2008 Olympic Games open ceremony. Even he, recently, just last month, he was fined for over 7 million yuan for having 3 children without permission, because his wife was in Jiangsu province. According to Jiangsu provincial regulation, if you disobeyed, you will be fined 7 times of your yearly income. So that's why he have to pay such a lot of money. But for him, it's nothing, because he's a millionaire or he's a billionaire. But you can imagine for common people, it's a large amount of money. Some will become poor. Sorry. Another example. This Cai Zhiqi, he was an associate professor in Guangzhou. The university name is Southeast China Science and Technology University, because he got a second child without permission. He was fired, not only fined, but also fired. He lost his job at the university. Of course, he is an expert. His major is in chemistry. So soon he got another job in Shandong in a chemical company. But anyhow, he argued he wants to get back his job, but he failed recently. Then, as I said a few minutes ago, not everybody in China have to follow this policy. So some exceptions. One is members of ethnic minorities. So that means only the Han nationality have to follow other nationalities. That means 55 nationalities that don't have to obey. Although the total number is not many, because 91% of Han nationality. Then, if your first child was seriously disabled, then you can get a second child. And for remarried couple, they also could have a second child. And later, I told you, especially this policy came into force in 1980, got strong resistance. So then in 1984, 2 years later, the regulation have some relaxed. So it is said in the countryside, for farmers, if your first child is a girl, you could have another chance. So that means you could have another. If you had the second child is also a daughter, a girl, you have no chance at all. And if you had 2 children for 1 pregnancy, that's lucky. You wouldn't be fined, but you wouldn't get the reward. So in China, it's very strange. Now let's look at the effects of the one-child policy, because it has been enforced for over 30 years. The first result is that because of this policy, China's population reduced to 400 million, or in other words, without this policy, China would have more of 400 million people more than now. That means more than U.S. citizens, U.S. population. Then the crude birth rate is much lower than before, from 33 per thousand to 19. Then another result is that the fertility rate is much lower than before, from 6 to less than 2 per woman. Now let's talk about the negative effects or side effects. So everything we say in the world, good effect and a side effect. The first is sex-selective abortion. So let me give you a little explanation. In China, especially in the countryside, the parents, they prefer a son. So if the woman, the pregnant, she wants to make sure if in her womb or in her womb is a boy or a girl, she would go to the hospital to have a check. If she found, or if her family found, it would be a girl, the pregnant would be forced to have abortion. So later, the Chinese government made a rule forbidding such doing. So you don't know whether you have a boy or a girl until you give birth to the child. But in America, I know you can do a check when you got a pregnancy. Another side effect is the little emperor syndrome. Because in one family, only one child, you can see 4 grandparents, 2 parents, all take care of this one child. So he or she is the center of the family. Somehow it's like an emperor, very proud. But then he or she may be self-centered, may lack the cooperation spirit. Of course, also he or she would feel lonely because no brothers or sisters. Another side effect is sex ratio become unbalanced. You can see from 1980s, 107 to 100 women now, till recently, it's already to 117. Or in the countryside and in the city, a little different, but generally, the ratio unbalanced. Another problem is aging population. There would be more and more people older than 65 and less young people because one-child policy. So the number you can see from 2010, only a little over 100 million. But 40 years later, it would be near 500 million elder people. So it's a burden to the society if without enough young people. Now, what's the future of this policy? Okay, I would have 5 minutes to finish it. Actually, when this policy was proposed by some experts, among them, these 2 are the key persons. One is called Song Jian, and another is Tian Xueyuan. Song Jian, he said at that time, this policy should be enforced for 30 to 40 years. So there's a time limit. And Tian Xueyuan, recently he said, our intent is to have such policy for 30 years. So now you can see from 1980 till now, it's already 34 years. If it's to 40 years, then 6 years left. So he said, we must have 1 generation to do sacrifice for the nation's benefit. So actually, the policy has been relaxed several times. In 2004, some top population experts came to Beijing and they have a discussion, then give a proposal to the central government, ask for the change of the one-child policy. That means to have more children, to let the parents have more children. But no answer. Then 5 years later, in 2009, they gave the proposal again. This time, the government gave a response. And finally, 2 years later, in 2011, the government allowed couples who are both the one child in the family, they could have a second child. Do you understand? Okay, I don't mention it. Now, more recently, new readjustment policy has been given. Last year, so in the Congress, People's Congress, a bill was passed. It means if a couple, one of them is the only child in the family, they could have a second child. So more people could benefit from it. And this policy has been enforced in 5 provinces and municipalities. And sure enough, the other provinces will also carry out this policy sooner or later, in this year or next year. And another thing, I think, is a hint. And just as I said now, before we have a special organization, the Family Planning Commission in the central government. Now, last year, it was merged into the health minister. So you can see it's not so important, so strong. Then this policy could have some good result. 1, 2, 3, 4. So the children per household would increase, and the population structure would be better, and the gender disparity would be also become better, more balanced. And lastly, it could be used to avoid the 4-to-1 family structure. You understand this structure? Yes, 4 grandparents, 2 parents, 1 child. Then it becomes 4-to-2, so it's maybe stable, more stable. But this is not enough. So recently, just this year, or this month, at the yearly People's Congress, and also this Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference at the yearly meeting, one of the National Committee member, Wang Ming, he's also a professor at the Tsinghua University. He proposed that we should completely remove the one-child policy and to cancel the social maintenance fee. So you can see in the future, possibly it could be cancelled sooner or later. I think it will be much better. So China is in a changing step, and China is become better. So this is what I'd like to talk to you. And thank you. And then I would give the time to ask questions. Okay.
Since the policy was started for
Yeah.
economic reasons,
Yeah.
and now China is so much better off
Yeah.
in that area, if they eliminate the policy, can the economy sustain the population explosion?
So yes, the most reason for this policy is for economic. But now that China become rich, and also China's government or the new leaders of China, they are more open-minded. They accept the experts' suggestion. So they are doing the adjustment. So I wish 6 years later it would be abolished. So yes, in some way, I'm also a victim of this policy. So anyhow, of course, this policy have some reason. Because at that time, China faced the serious problems. Okay. Thank you. Any more questions? Okay.
Are Chinese orphanages still facing overpopulation currently?
So my listening comprehension is not good.
Okay.
Can you say it louder?
Chinese orphanages, are they still facing overpopulation today?
No, yes, that's right. Not overpopulation. Of course, China is still overpopulation, but according to the survey, the Chinese birth now is much lower. Sometimes it's not increasing, much lower than expected. Okay.
Is the U.S. facing overpopulation?
U.S. The U.S.
Is the
face.
U.S. facing overpopulation?
I don't know if U.S. facing overpopulation.
Is it?
I'm not sure whether American citizens can answer that better than me. But you can see America did not carry out such a policy, but it's not too overpopulated, especially compared with China. I think it could have more people. Okay, thank you.
When you have those changes right now,
Yeah.
I know like in other industrialized countries, they have a similar problem with the replenishment range of, like, because they look at having a lot of people getting older and
Yeah,
having
yeah.
to be carried by fewer and fewer productive adults.
Yeah.
When you look at the Chinese policy change now, is it more an ideological change or is it more the kind of concern that we don't know how we can support, like more the economic idea that it is economically not feasible to have so many older people supported by so many fewer, adults who are in the workforce?
Yes, both. Yeah, both are right. So actually, China also faces this problem. And yes, so this policy changing also because of this. China actually faces a problem, aging problem, and for some family, for China, maybe in 30 years, China would be also enter the aging time. So when Zhang Yimou just now, he was punished for 200, but Russian. I read an article in the internet said the Russian said, if Zhang Yimou was in Russia, he would be a hero. He was a hero because he got so many children. We need more children. Okay.
Would Chinese couples who have multiple children outside of China, would they face consequences as Chinese citizens when they return to the country?
No, China don't accept the double citizenship. So if a child was born in a foreign country, he's not a Chinese. Of course, if, for example, when a child was born in America, he automatically become American citizen. So China would not, even if you want to take him home, back to China, you said, I want to let him to become a Chinese citizen, the Chinese government won't accept it. Or if you give up your U.S. citizen, then you can become a Chinese citizen. That's a Chinese policy. Okay.
You spoke a lot about fees if you have a second child, but
Yeah.
what happens if you plan the, second or third child? Because when I lived in China, I had a lot of people
Yeah,
telling
yeah.
me that you could actually pay for another child.
Yes, that's right. Yeah,
I think
you're right.
you in.
Yes, I forgot to tell this. Yeah, when the policy was coming to be in 1980s, China's economy is called the planning economy. So the central government planned everything. So some people said, you can plan everything, but you can't plan my life. So because there's a very strong control at that time. But since 1992, China has begun this policy, this system called socialist market economy. So many people give up the job. They formed their own private company. They do their own job. So they have a lot of money. So they can pay such social fee, social maintenance fee. So just you said, many people now in China, they have second child. They pay the fee. But I don't have enough money, so I can't do that.
Yeah, so it's like in the US, you can get away with anything, you can't pay.
Okay, you please.
I'm from Hong Kong,
Yeah.
so when I go back to Hong Kong, I hear stories about people from the mainland going to Hong Kong to give birth and then
Yeah.
going back
Yeah.
to the mainland. So how does the government deal with that?
So Chinese government don't encourage them, but they can't force them not to do that. Yes.
So, would they be given a Hong Kong citizenship instead of
No, they don't
citizenship
give.
if they were born in Hong Kong?
So it's Hong Kong's policy. I'm not sure. I think you're from Hong Kong. You can be you're more clear about your policy. Thank you. Yeah.
Would you say, in comparison, when you look at mainland China and Taiwan,
Yeah.
that Taiwan kind of offers a experiment how, the policies could
Yeah,
that be different?
Yes. So actually, yes, you mentioned an important question. Actually, 2 decades ago, South Korea, and Taiwan also have such a birth control policy. But then they found it's a mistake because that family planning policy, the Taiwan and the South Korea faces a problem that is there are more deaths than births. So now they give up this policy. So China is also can learn a lesson from them. Okay?
I think we have time for one more question.
Yeah, last question. Okay.
If the policy were to stop, or they were to abolish the one-child rule, what are your thoughts on, would the population increase dramatically, or would it kind of slowly ramp back up in China?
So you mean because of policy?
Because if they did, or in 6 years when the policy is no longer enforced, or
Yeah,
if they do decide to do away with the policy, what are your thoughts on how quickly will the population grow? How many children will families
Okay.
start?
Yes, it's the last but not the least question. It's very important. Yes, actually, with the economic development, with the more young people got high educated, they got married because like in USA, in Russia, many young people, even they have the right to have more children, they don't want children. Even there's a family called Dink, they both don't have one. They don't want one child. So how do you say the more? So actually, naturally, automatically, the population would be reduced. To tell the truth, this one-child policy was successful in China cities. It is calculated 91% of families followed this policy. But in the countryside, only 31 or 35 population followed that. So as far as I know, because my grandmother lived in the countryside, I often go to the countryside. In that village, many parents have 3 children or 5 children because they wanted to have a son, but only the 5 children all are girls. So they have more than 2, sometimes more than 3. So this is the situation.
Why don't you share the information about the survey at Tsinghua of the young people, asking if they want to have more than one child?
Yes. There is a survey, and some people's university. They said recently they have a survey about 30,000 people, but only 300 would like to have a second child, although they have the right. And another survey by China Youth News Internet, among the 6,000 couples who have the right to have children, about 60% would like to have it, and the other 40% would not like to have a second child because of the seriously economic burden. They need a lot of money, a lot of energy. They want to have. Okay.
Give Professor Newman.
Thank you.